Hey everybody, welcome back to our deep dive into the book of Luke. Today we are looking at Luke chapter 6 verses 12 to 16, in which Jesus calls his disciples. What's really interesting about this passage is that Luke builds up to this moment. He's already sort of called disciples earlier in Levi, otherwise known as Matthew, Simon Peter as well. But now the full list is gathered here. And what immediately precedes this is why context is important, is you have these series of events that we looked at last week where Jesus encounters the religious elite, Pharisees and scribes, who are opposed to him, who are questioning him and plotting against him. And so you have these groups that are diametrically opposed to each other. So, and what Luke has been doing throughout his gospel is building this case that Jesus is worthy to be followed. And that when you understand who Jesus really is, it leads to your life being transformed. But if you choose to not see Jesus for who he really is, and you want things to say the same, or you want to reject what Jesus offers, then you miss out. And so chapter 6, the beginning, sets up this these two different responses of disciples starting to follow Jesus and understand who Jesus is, and these Pharisees and religious elite who want to reject Jesus and the blessing he brings. And so this then leads Jesus to go up onto a mountain and spend an entire night in prayer. This is not an accident. This is a theme in Luke's gospel about the importance of prayer, especially in Jesus' life and especially in the life of the church. And so what Jesus is doing isn't just going up and praying for random things. He's about to set something up that's really dynamic and powerful. You may remember in last week's video, Jesus had this teaching about you can't pour new wine into old wineskins, because if you do, the old wineskins will burst. And we talked about how what Jesus is doing is something new. It's different. And so if you like the old and can't accept or appreciate the new, then you're going to reject it. But what Jesus is doing is doing a new thing. It doesn't fit into the old categories. And this is what we see here. And so it's no accident that Jesus goes up, he prays for 12 people that he's going to choose. Why is that number significant? Well, because there are 12 tribes of Israel. And those 12 tribes represented the whole of God's people and how God worked. And so by Jesus going up on the mountain and praying specifically for 12, this is him living out that passage of the new wine. Jesus now is doing something new. Instead of the authority and the power resting in the 12 tribes of Israel as God's people, Jesus is starting something new, in that his authority, his power is going to be vested in these 12 individuals, who he both calls here disciples, which means learners. That's what disciples means. But he also calls them apostles. Apostle, that word means sent one. And in the New Testament, that word took on special meaning for those who had been set aside by Jesus to do his work of planting churches, teaching doctrine, commissioning people, and so they had a very important role. You might think of them as pastors today, but they had a multifunctional role where they were the ones who were to carry out Jesus's teaching and spread his message to the world by planting churches and appointing leaders and that sort of stuff. And so these aren't just learners, disciples, but they are also going to be the people who Jesus was going to plant his church on. Now, what's interesting in this list is that, first of all, it says Jesus has a lot of disciples, and we see that in the next section as well. But out of this wider group of people, he specifically chooses 12. And so there's 12 that are specially appointed. And as I said, what's interesting is we see 4 different lists of disciples in the New Testament. I'll put them on the screen here so you can look at them side by side. So we have this passage in Luke chapter 6. We have Matthew chapter 10, Mark chapter 3, and another one in Acts chapter 1, which does not include Judas Iscariot, since Judas had obviously committed suicide at that stage. And you'll notice there's a lot of things that these lists have in common and some things they don't have in common, which is a little bit controversial. First of all, every list starts with Simon Peter. So Peter, the disciple, Peter the apostle, he's always the most prominent one on the list. Then you'll see the next four, even though they may change in order, are always the same four. So Peter, Andrew, James, and John. Those are always the first four in each of these lists, which means they probably had prominent roles in the life of the church. And we see this throughout the book of Acts and into the later New Testament letters as well. Then the list goes on. And what you'll notice is some interesting, probably if you pay attention, in Luke and Acts, which is written by the same person, the 11th person who gets named is Judas, the son of James. If you look at the Matthew and Mark's list, there is no Judas, the son of James, in their list. Likewise, in the 11th spot in Matthew and Mark, they have Thaddeus. Luke and Acts do not have anyone named Thaddeus. The easy way to reconcile this difference is that Judas, the son of James, and Thaddeus are the same person. We see, and we've already talked about this before, that many of the disciples have different names. So you have Matthew and Levi, same person. You have Simon, Peter, Cephas, the Rock. It's all the same person. Even Bartholomew. Bartholomew is a word that simply means the son of Tholomew. That's what that word means. And what's interesting is we don't see Bartholomew really mentioned, and especially in John's gospel, there seems to be another disciple or apostle named Nathaniel, who is not in any of these lists. And so again, probably Nathaniel is the same person as Bartholomew, just like Thaddeus is the same person as Judas, the son of James. We see this in Thomas, who's called Didymus, the twin. And so these guys have, nicknames or special names that Jesus has given them. And so even though the lists are slightly different, we shouldn't get, out of whack because of that, because it's simply, people who have been given different names. The interesting thing about this list, as we conclude, is that as you pay attention to this list, it is conducted of a variety of people from different backgrounds. You have fishermen, you have tax collectors, you even have a political revolutionary, Simon the Zealot. You have a skeptical man who wanted clear proof of Jesus' resurrection in Thomas. You even have a future traitor in Judas Iscariot. None of this was an accident, but God's hand was at work choosing this diverse team, which will show what God's kingdom is really on about. It's a diverse body of people from different backgrounds who normally would have nothing in common, would not even hang out together, and yet because they are chosen by Jesus, they are made family. Both broken people who deny Jesus, people who get it wrong all the time, they are all still included into this family, this team. What follows next after this, we'll see, is that now that this team is assembled, now that he's doing this new thing, Jesus will then start to unpack what it means to understand him and what it means to respond to God's kingdom. So more on that next week. But for now, I think this is a great way to think about how, in the great love and mercy of God, people from all kinds of different backgrounds are welcomed and included and appointed as leaders, which should make us think about what our role is, that how Jesus called us, invited us, and appoints us to do the work of serving him. So I'll leave you with that, and we'll see you later next week. Bye.